Picture an old window. Rain on the glass, slow and steady, the kind that doesn't hurry to fall. And inside, just behind that glass, a cup of tea sits warm in someone's hands. No one is rushing. No one is performing for anyone. No one is checking the clock to see if it's time to go somewhere, be somewhere, prove something. And yet, this might be the most peaceful moment of that person's entire day. Outside, somewhere down the street, the world keeps moving the way it always does. Cars passing, neighbors hurrying past with shopping bags, the noise of a life that insists on staying busy. But inside this one quiet room, none of that noise reaches very far. The rain keeps its own gentle rhythm. The tea keeps its own warmth. And the person sitting there watching it all from a place of stillness is not missing out on anything. They have simply stepped quietly out of the race. If you're over 70, someone has probably told you to get out more, to stay active, to keep busy, keep moving, don't slow down, don't let yourself sit still too long. And maybe somewhere quietly inside you, a small voice started to believe that staying home means you are giving up, that choosing rest means choosing to disappear. I want to tell you something different today. Staying home, when it is chosen with peace, not chosen out of fear, might be one of the wisest, gentlest, most healing things you can do for your own heart. Okay? Let's slow down together and talk about why. If you have ever felt guilty for not wanting to go out, if you have ever sat in your favorite chair, content, warm, quiet, and then felt a sudden flash of shame, because some part of you whispered, you should be doing more, you should be somewhere else right now. I want you to hear this fully before anything else. You spent decades showing up for other people, right? You raised children through fevers and heartbreaks and long school years. Or you worked the same job for 40 years, tired some mornings before you even opened your eyes, but you went anyway. Or you took care of aging parents, holding their hands through their hardest days. Or you built a home, a family, a life, brick by brick from almost nothing. Maybe you buried people you loved and kept going anyway because someone had to. Maybe you held a family together through hard years that no one outside that family will ever fully understand. You have already proven your strength to this world 1,000 times over. 1,000 times, okay? Not once, not twice, 1,000 times. So tell me, who decided that all of that effort still isn't enough? Who decided that even now in your 70s, your 80s, your 90s, you still have to keep performing busyness just to be allowed to rest? Maybe you compare yourself to a neighbor who is always traveling, always posting photos of some new trip, some new adventure, and a quiet voice inside you asks, why don't I want that anymore? What's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. Truly, nothing. Different seasons of a life call for different things. And a tree in autumn is not failing because it is no longer blooming the way it did in spring. It is simply doing exactly what an autumn tree is supposed to do. You do not owe anyone a performance of activity. You do not have to keep moving just to prove that you are still young at heart. Whatever that phrase even means, that pressure, the pressure to always be doing, always be out, always be seen, always be available for the world's approval. That pressure does not come from wisdom. It never did. It comes from fear. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of being seen as fragile. Fear of becoming invisible. And the Buddha, in his own teaching, in his own quiet later years, showed us a very different way to meet this exact fear. In the old Pali language, there is a word viveka. It simply means seclusion or withdrawal. But listen closely, because this is important, not the lonely, frightened kind of withdrawal, not the kind where you hide because you're afraid of the world. Viveka is the seclusion of a mind that has finally stopped chasing. The Buddha himself, in his later years, did not run from town to town anymore the way he did as a young teacher, hungry to be heard, hungry to spread the teaching to every corner of the land. He rested often beneath quiet trees. He let people come find him instead. This was not weakness, and it was not retreat. It was the natural, graceful movement of a life that had matured, like a young river, fast and narrow and crashing over rocks, that slowly widens with age, slows down, and begins to reflect the whole sky on its surface instead of just rushing past it. There is no shame in this kind of widening. No culture, no scripture, no wise teacher ever said that a life only has value when it is moving fast. In fact, almost every tradition that has ever studied the human spirit, east or west, eventually arrives at the same quiet truth that wisdom tends to settle, not sprint. The elders who are remembered most fondly in any village, any family, any community are rarely remembered for how busy they stayed. They are remembered for the warmth they offered when you sat beside them, however briefly, however still that sitting was. Staying home, in this deeper sense, is not a retreat from life. It is arriving finally at the part of life where peace gets to lead instead of striving. Okay? Let's hold on to that picture for a moment. The wide, slow river reflecting the sky. Now let's talk gently about what this teaching can actually show us about this stage of your life. I want to walk through 5 things with you, one at a time, slowly, because each one deserves its own space to breathe. The first thing is this: stillness is not surrender. It is wisdom that has been earned, like a wage paid out after decades of honest work. Think about a young tree freshly planted. It bends and strains and reaches toward every patch of sunlight it can find, right? Its roots are thin, still searching, still unsure of the ground beneath it. But an old tree, a tree that has lived through 50 storms, 100 winters, countless droughts and floods, that tree does not need to chase the light anymore. Its roots run deep, wide, sure. The light comes to it now simply because it has stood in one place long enough to be found by the sun every single morning without effort. Your decades of striving, your decades of working and raising and caring and building, that was the chasing, that was the season of reaching for sunlight. This stage of your life, the stage you are in right now, is the season of rooting. And rooting looks like stillness from the outside. But underneath the soil, underneath the surface, something deep and strong is happening. Okay? The second thing is this: your home is not an empty room waiting to be filled with activity. It is a temple of memory, and sitting quietly inside it is itself a kind of devotion. Every object in your home has lived a life alongside you. The chair by the window holds the shape of 1,000 quiet evenings. The kitchen still carries, somewhere in its walls, the smell of meals you cooked for people you love, meals that fed more than just hungry stomachs. They fed whole childhoods, whole marriages, whole friendships. The photographs on your shelf are not decorations, they are doorways. Even the small scratches on the table, the worn patch on the carpet where feet have walked for 30 years, the slightly crooked picture frame no one has bothered to straighten. These are not signs of neglect, they are evidence of a life that was actually lived inside these walls, not just passed through. Sitting quietly in this space, surrounded by these things, is not doing nothing. It is honoring a life that has already been fully, beautifully lived. There is no shame in sitting inside a temple. There never was. The third thing is this: non-attachment means you no longer need the world's approval in order to feel worthy. The Buddha taught again and again that so much of our suffering comes from clinging to how others see us, clinging to the idea that we must always be productive, always visible, always impressive, always out there proving our value to people who, if we are honest, were never really watching that closely in the first place. Most people are far too busy with their own worries to be keeping score of yours. When you let go of needing to prove that you are still busy, still relevant, still constantly capable of more, something extraordinary happens inside you. You become free, truly, quietly free. Free from a race that frankly you already finished a long time ago. The fourth thing is this: quiet attention can hold more peace inside it than constant motion ever could. Have you ever noticed how a candle flame kept perfectly still in a windless room burns clean, bright, and steady? But shake that same candle, carry it constantly from room to room, expose it to every passing draft, and it flickers, gutters, struggles to stay lit at all. Your mind works the same way. Decades of constant motion, constant obligation, constant noise, these can leave even the strongest spirit flickering, never quite settled enough to burn at its brightest. But a quiet home, a quiet morning, a quiet cup of tea held in both hands, these are not lesser than a busy, crowded life. They might, in fact, be more. They give your inner flame the stillness it needs to finally burn clear. And the fifth thing, the one most people never quite realize until they've lived long enough to feel it in their bones, is this: peace chosen on purpose is not the same as isolation that happens by accident. This is the part one wants you to hold on to most carefully, because it is easy to misunderstand. Staying home with peace in your heart does not mean closing your door to the people who love you. It does not mean disappearing from your children's lives, or letting friendships quietly fade because reaching out feels like too much effort. The Buddha did not stop teaching when he rested beneath those quiet trees. He simply stopped chasing. People still came. He still welcomed them. Connections still happened, just on gentler terms. Terms that honored his own peace instead of exhausting it. So when we say staying home can be the wisest thing you do for yourself, we are not saying close the world out. We are saying stop forcing yourself outward just to prove something. Let your home become a place where love is invited in, rather than a fortress that keeps everyone away. There is a profound difference between solitude that nourishes you and isolation that slowly empties you, and only you in the quiet of your own heart can tell which one you are living in. Solitude leaves you feeling fuller, calmer, more yourself. Isolation leaves you feeling hollow, forgotten, smaller with each passing week. If today, right now, you feel lonely, truly lonely in a way that aches rather than rests you, please don't sit with that alone. Reach towards someone, even with one small phone call. Peace and connection were always meant to walk together, not stand on opposite sides of a locked door. And the sixth thing, quieter than the rest, is this: solitude gives your mind the rare chance to finally digest the life it has already lived. Think of a field after harvest. The farmer does not rush to plant something new the very next morning. The field is left to rest, to absorb, to settle back into itself before it can hold anything new again. If the farmer planted again too soon without rest, the soil would grow thin and tired, and nothing good would grow from it for years. Your mind, after 70, 80, 90 years of gathering experience, joy, grief, love, loss, laughter, hard mornings, soft evenings, deserves that same rest. Quiet time at home is not empty time. It is the time your mind finally gets to sit with everything it has lived through, to make peace with old chapters, to let gratitude settle where confusion once was. This kind of inner harvesting cannot happen in a rush. It needs stillness, and it needs time, and both of those are finally fully available to you now. Let me tell you a story now. A story about an old gardener. For 60 years, this gardener traveled from town to town, valley to valley, building beautiful gardens for kings, for temples, for wealthy families who lived far, far from his own small house. Everywhere he went, people praised him. What a master, they would say, admiring the roses he had coaxed into bloom in soil that had never held a flower before. What extraordinary skill you have! And he would smile and bow and pack his tools and travel on to the next town, the next garden, the next group of strangers waiting to be impressed. But underneath the praise he was always tired, always packing a bag the moment he had finally unpacked it, always leaving the place he secretly loved most, his own small garden, behind his own small house, untouched, overgrown, quietly waiting, because he was always too busy proving his worth somewhere else. When he turned 75, his knees grew too weak to travel anymore. At first, this felt like a kind of death to him. He sat by his window, watching his own neglected garden through the glass, and a deep grief filled his chest. Who was he, if he was no longer traveling, no longer building, no longer being praised by strangers in faraway towns? What good was a gardener who could no longer go anywhere? But slowly, day by day, almost without deciding to, he began to step outside, not far, just into his own soil, the soil he had ignored for 60 years. He pulled one weed, he watered one rose. He sat for a long while beside one young tree, simply breathing the same air it was breathing. And as the weeks passed, something unexpected happened. His small, neglected garden began to bloom more beautifully than any garden he had ever built for anyone else. Word spread quietly through the village. People began to visit him now, not because he traveled to impress them, but because something true, something unhurried and real, had grown right there, in the one place he had finally chosen to stay. His daughter started visiting every Sunday afternoon, bringing tea and sitting with him beneath the rose bush he had planted with his own tired hands. His old friend from childhood began coming by on Thursday afternoons, and the two of them would sit for hours, saying very little, simply enjoying being in each other's presence again, after decades of busy lives pulling them apart. Even the neighborhood children began stopping by after school, drawn by the smell of roses and the sight of an old man who always seemed to have time for them, something none of the busy adults in their lives ever seemed to have. He had not disappeared from the world, you see. He had simply stopped chasing it. And in return, the world, the people who truly loved him, found their way back to him in the one place he had finally allowed himself to rest. I think about this story often, because I think so many of us, no matter our age, spend years building beautiful things in faraway places, trying to prove our worth to people who barely remember our names by the next season. And I think there comes a point in every life, and if you are over 70, you may already be standing at that point right now, where the wisest thing you can possibly do is turn around, walk back through your own front door, and finally tend to the garden that has been waiting for you all along. There is one more small story I want to leave with you, shorter than the first, but just as true. A young student once asked an old forest monk why the trees in winter looked so bare, so still, almost lifeless against the gray sky. "Are they dying, teacher?" the student asked, worried. The old monk smiled and shook his head. "Look closer," he said. "They are not dying, they are resting on purpose, so that they have the strength to bloom again in spring. A tree that never rested would not survive long enough to ever bloom at all." The student looked again, and this time, instead of seeing emptiness in the bare branches, he saw quiet strength gathering itself for what was still to come. You are not a bare winter tree because something has gone wrong. You are a bare winter tree because you have lived through enough seasons to know that rest is not the opposite of life. It is what makes the next bloom possible. So what can you actually do with this, starting today? Not someday, not when I feel ready, but today. I want to give you a few small specific things, not vague advice like meditate more or find peace, but real practical steps you can hold in your hands. The first thing, sit by a window each morning for 5 quiet minutes, not scrolling through your phone, not turning on the television out of habit, just you, the morning light, and your own breath moving in and out. As you sit there, gently name 3 small things in your home that you are grateful for. Maybe it's the chair beneath you. Maybe it's the warmth of a blanket on your knees. Maybe it's simply the smell of tea steeping in the next room. You might even say it quietly out loud like a small prayer. I am grateful for this chair. I am grateful for this light. I am grateful for this breath. There is no need to make it complicated. The simplicity is the whole point. This small ritual, repeated daily, slowly trains your mind to find genuine peace exactly where you already are, instead of always reaching towards some future moment when things will finally feel okay. The second thing, invite warmth in rather than always chasing it outside. Today, not next week. Today, call or message one person you love, a child, a grandchild, an old friend you haven't spoken with in a while. You don't need a grand reason or a special occasion. You could simply say, I was thinking of you and I'd love it if you came by for tea sometime this week. That's all. That's enough. Invite them over for a simple cup of tea, even if it's only for 20 minutes. You do not need to travel anywhere to feel connected. Let your home become a place where the people who love you are warmly welcomed in again and again, rather than a place that quietly closes itself off from the world out of habit or fatigue. If a visit isn't possible this week, even a short, warm phone call counts. The goal isn't distance from people, it's freedom from the exhausting performance of constant outward motion. The third thing, create one small daily ritual of peace, something that belongs entirely to you. It could be watering a single plant each morning, the same plant every day, watching it slowly grow. It could be reading 2 pages of a favorite book before bed. No more, no less, simply to give your mind a gentle, familiar place to land. It could be watching the sunset each evening from your favorite chair, letting the colors change without rushing to do anything else. It could even be something as small as listening to one piece of music you loved when you were young, eyes closed, letting the memory wash over you without judgment. Let this ritual be entirely yours. Something no deadline can hurry, something no one else's schedule can interrupt, something that belongs only to you and the quiet hours of your day. And the fourth thing, gentle but important, notice the difference day by day between resting and disappearing. If a week goes by and you realize you haven't spoken to another living soul, that is not peace, that is isolation, and it deserves your attention and your care, not your shame. Peace has a softness to it, a kind of ease in the chest, a sense of being settled. Loneliness has an ache to it, a heaviness, a tightness, a longing for a voice other than your own. Learn to tell them apart in your own body, and when you feel the ache, let yourself reach outward, even just a little, a phone call, a short note, a knock on a neighbor's door. There is no failure in needing people. There never was, and there never will be. The lotus flower does not chase the riverbank, right? It does not struggle and strain to bloom somewhere else, somewhere it imagines might be better, more impressive, more deserving of admiration. It simply opens fully exactly where it is rooted in the quiet mud beneath the water, and in doing so, without trying, without performing, it becomes the most beautiful thing in the entire river. You do not need to be anywhere else to be enough. You never did. You do not need to prove anything more to anyone, not to your neighbors, not to your children, not even to the quiet critical voice inside your own head that has been pushing you for decades. The quiet room you are sitting in right now, today, this very moment, it can become the most peaceful garden you have ever grown if you simply let it. Think back for a moment to the old gardener sitting beneath his rosebush, his daughter's hand in his. Think back to the bare winter tree, gathering its quiet strength beneath a gray sky, trusting that spring would come again in its own time. Think back to the wide, slow river, no longer crashing over rocks, simply reflecting the sky. None of them were in a hurry. None of them needed to be anywhere else. And none of them were any less alive for choosing stillness. Let the people who love you walk through its door. Let your own breath be enough company on the mornings when no one else is there. And let the rest of your years unfold not as a race towards some finish line, but as a slow, gentle blooming exactly where you are rooted, soft as morning light through an old window, steady as a flame that no longer flickers, Wide and unhurried is a river that has finally learned to hold the whole sky. May you be healthy, happy, and free from suffering. Namo Buddhaya.